So throughout the next 7 days, I'm gonna be trying to learn as much Korean as I possibly can. Why am I doing this? Well, let me tell you why I'm doing this. Firstly, almost 2 years ago, during my summer vacation, I discovered Korean. I learned so much in just 3 weeks that I thought that I'm going to master it in like a year. But when the school year has started, I completely abandoned the project, and I wanted to come back to Korean ever since. But I could never really bring myself to do it, and this is my chance. Secondly, I got really inspired by other creators who try to learn a language in a week, and I wanted to see what I can do myself. And finally, what is there better to do in the quarantine anyway? Also, at the end of the week, I'm gonna test my Korean skills, but I'm gonna tell you about this later. For now, let's begin. So, on day 1, I recorded myself saying what I could remember in Korean since 2018. And back then, although I've been learning for only about 3 weeks, I really learned a lot, but I forgot pretty much everything. So, here are a couple examples of what I could say before this week of learning. And just please excuse my pronunciation, because I'm not that good at it and I'm still learning, so just enjoy this guy trying to scrap any Korean that's left in his head after over 1.5 years of no learning, and hopefully he'll improve in the coming days. So for example, I can say things like 지금 한국어 공부해요, or 저는 학생이에요, or maybe it was 저는 학생입니다. Also, 가방이 책상게이에요. 가방이 책상게이에요. I think this may be completely wrong. I don't even remember. You know, that's why this week is so important to me. I not only want to get back to that place where I was in 2018, I also want to improve on it and actually come out better this time. So, let me quickly tell you what is my plan for this week. First of all, I want to learn for a couple of intense hours every day. I don't want to go from like 8 AM to 8 PM, because I believe that there is a limit to how much information you can actually absorb each day. Then I plan on sleeping a lot to let this information from short-term memory be converted to long-term. And when it comes to what I'm actually gonna be doing, I have a couple of resources. Firstly, I want to go through this online Korean class called Jenny's Korean. I found it to be actually really good. Then I have a Korean textbook. It's in Polish, so you won't really understand anything. And although I don't plan on using it a ton, I want to see what I can get from it. There are actually some recordings of native speakers in here, so this may be a helpful resource. Finally, I've printed a list of the 1,000 most commonly used Korean words, and for grammar, I'm gonna be listening to the Talk to Me in Korean podcast. But most importantly, I want to consume as much media as I possibly can and just kind of immerse myself in the culture. I'm not gonna lie, it is a lot to take in, but I hope I can do this in a week. Alright, it's day 2, and I've been learning a lot and using mnemonics also to remember some words. For example, here's how I memorized the word grandma. So, grandma in Korean is 할머니, and I memorized it by imagining that older people have a lot of harmony in their lives. So, this is a quick way to remember it easily. Also, I remember one word from my past Korean endeavors really clearly. This word is 주차장, and it means parking lot. and it's just so fun to say. So if you're trying to learn a language as well, look out for words like these because they may be really helpful actually. Also, I wanted to get better at pronunciation, so I set some of those sentences from the textbook into Google Translate, and I got some really funky results. For example, this one, and this one, and another one. I mean, how does this keep happening? I mean, am I really that bad? I guess that's something I have to work on before going to Korea. Alright, welcome to day 4. Let me tell you what I've been doing. First of all, I feel like I'm at pretty much the same level as I was back in 2018. Considering this being just 3 days, I feel like that's a pretty good result. But it's been a very intense couple of days. Once again, I have to memorize everything right away, because I won't have the time to revisit anything later in the week. That's why I even stopped taking notes to save some time. However, I've been doing a lot of exercises from this textbook, and I've even started making up sample dialogues and writing them down, and I plan on doing a lot more of that. I believe that this is a great practice. Basically, it forces you to use all the words and grammatical structures you just learned in the most efficient way, like in everyday use. Also, I've started watching Korean news, but I can't understand pretty much anything. That's why I'm a little bit worried about this week's challenge. Let me tell you why. So, as I've said at the beginning of this video, I came up with a way to test my Korean skills after this week. Basically, I want to look up the most popular K-pop song on YouTube and try to translate its lyrics without any help. I don't really listen to that much K-pop, so there is a small chance that I will know any lyrics at all. However, the problem is that it's halfway through this week, and I don't know if I will be able to understand more than just a couple of words. So, fortunately, I came across a new YouTube channel from the makers of Talk to Me in Korean, where they talk in 100% Korean. So, this may be a helpful resource for understanding more than just a couple of words of this song. It's like the Inner French Intermediate podcast, but in video form. However, there is another problem. It's day 4, and I don't feel like I'm at the intermediate stage yet. So these past 2 days I've been feeling a little bit burnt out. My energy and motivation are definitely not as high as they were at the beginning of the week, but that's still okay. I'm showing up, especially in the evenings, which are my greatest study hours ever. And also, something happened that I didn't expect, because I actually love learning from this textbook. It gives me like a clear path to follow, which is so important and relieves a lot of stress and takes the motivation out of the equation. So it makes it really approachable. So I would really recommend getting a textbook or just like a free online course to follow if you're starting to learn a language. So yeah, it's day 6, the final stretch, and I actually have encountered a funny word that I wanted to share with you this past evening, so check it out. What can this word mean, right? This one. This word right there. handsome. Guess what? It means handsome. Alright, so it's day 7, and I feel like I've learned a lot. But mostly conversational Korean. So things like tenses, grammar, particles, but not a lot of vocabulary. And I mean, that's the advantage of consistent learning. Because you have more time and you can use more sources, you can just absorb more words. So unfortunately, that's not what I'm doing here this week. Look, if you were to memorize 3 words a day for a year, you would know over 8,000 words. And that's the amount that is usually used in most languages daily, around 1 to 3,000 words. So we'll see how it is with Korean, but technically, you could learn how to converse in a language in a year kind of easily. Of course, you'd have to also learn some grammar, but still. So this is just the beginning. I'm back on track with Korean and I'm very happy about that. So today I'm just gonna do some more exercises, and tomorrow I'll do a little warm-up by writing some dialogues, and then I'm gonna test myself with the challenge I talked about earlier. So we'll see how it goes, and wish me luck. Alright, so it's the day after, and it's time to see how much I got right. So the actual translation was really difficult. I didn't manage to do a lot of verses, but I did quite a few. But I'm not 100% sure on any of them. So we'll see how it goes. So I did a lot of guesswork, and especially in verse 4. I translated it as "my heart wants to go and sing," and the actual translation is that it's you I was looking all over for. Okay, next one. Ooh! Okay, the first line of the second verse, I translated it as "our meeting was mathematically determined," whereas the actual translation is "our meeting is like a mathematical formula." I see this as an absolute win. I'm proud of myself. Like in a week, like mathematically determined mathematical formula. It's pretty good. Alright, so I translated line 13 as "I'm learning from the beginning to the end." And it's not that far off actually. There's no mention of any learning here, but the actual translation is "from the day of the universe's creation and beyond." So I mean it's like from to... So I actually noticed this pattern, and I knew it had something to do with it, but I just didn't know all the vocab, so it's pretty good still. Alright, line 27, I translated as "will you listen to my love this time?" And the actual translation is "this is the emotion they call love." So I mean call, listen, call and listen are pretty close. Not in this context, but I am actually way more proud of myself than I thought I would be, so still pretty good. At this point I have given up. I translated line 40 as "I'm a moving human," and the actual translation is "don't look back." Yeah, at this point I have given up, and although I have a lot of empty space here and I couldn't even translate half of it from context, I still am pretty happy with the result. After just a week, the few verses I managed to kind of translate turns out pretty alright. Of course, it's not really a good test after just a week to translate a full song completely on my own, but still I am pretty happy, and yeah, I have to think about it now, process it all, and I'll see you in the conclusion. Alright, so I had a little bit of time to reflect on this past week, and I have a couple of thoughts on it. So, firstly, I really recommend it. Even if you're gonna set yourself a challenge and you're gonna fail miserably at it, it's really worth it. I think I learned as much as I would have learned in 2 months during this week. Not necessarily because I did so much, but because I had a lot of motivation and also a goal I was working towards. Still, 7 days, I cannot say that I learned the language. You know, I would know how to order something in a restaurant, and although my pronunciation and my reading speed really improved, and I also learned a lot about Korean culture, learning a language in 7 days is still like an impossible task. And this comes back to something I said earlier in this video about there being a limit to how much you can learn in a single day. And I think it still holds true. It's not like a set in stone kind of barrier, but it's just a concept that let me go easier on myself this week. You know, I kind of knew that even if I did a 12-hour study session each day, I wouldn't have really learned more. I probably would just burn myself out and not want to come back to Korean ever. But now, I am more excited about learning the language than I was before this week, and I think that that's the way to go. So, a couple of things that are helpful. First of all, mnemonics. I mentioned them before, but they are great for short-term and long-term learning. Also, I found that learning the 1000 most common Korean words doesn't make that much sense in the beginning. You know, in other languages I would say that that's a good idea, but in Korean there are just so many particles and grammatical structures that you have to follow that learning like singular words doesn't make much sense. So I tried it, but I haven't been successful with it. So then I would also recommend learning vocabulary with a long-term approach, as I've said before, because I believe that context really helps in learning new words. So these Korean shows and entertainment can provide the context you're looking for. So finally, if I want you to take one thing away from this video, it would be that you don't have to stress that much about learning anything. You know, just make it a challenge. Gamify it and think long term. You don't have to remember every word you've read and take thousands of notes, and also stick to one thing and don't overthink it. And that should be it. Oh man, I think that's more than one thing, so I will leave you here. Thank you very much for watching, and try this challenge yourself. But for now, take care and stay safe.